Dr. Sarah stared at the medical pod containing her husband, Captain, through tear-blurred eyes. 3 months had passed since the incident on 442B, and still he lay motionless, his vital signs steady but minimal. The alien doctors had done everything they could with their advanced technology, but remained trapped in what they called a neural suspension state. The medical bay of the Galactic Alliance station hummed with activity around them. Alien physicians from a dozen different species moved between patients, their various appendages manipulating holographic displays and complex instruments that Sarah barely understood. She had learned more about xenobiology in the past 3 months than in her entire career as a human diplomat. "Mrs." came a gentle voice behind her. Sarah turned to see Doctor, the station's chief medical officer. Those four arms moved in graceful patterns as she spoke, her crystalline skin catching the ambient light. "I know this is difficult, but perhaps it is time to consider the options we discussed." Sarah shook her head firmly. "No, there has to be something else, some treatment we haven't tried." Doctor's large, multifaceted eyes showed genuine sympathy. "Human neural patterns are unlike anything we have encountered in the galaxy. Your species' consciousness operates on frequencies that our instruments can barely detect. What happened to your husband during the psychic attack on 442B created a resonance cascade that locked his mind in a protective shell." "But he's still in there," Sarah insisted, placing her hand on the pod's surface. "I know he is." The incident had occurred during humanity's first diplomatic mission to establish trade relations with a highly advanced species known for their mastery of mental disciplines. What should have been a routine meeting had turned into a nightmare when a rogue faction launched a psychic assault on the human delegation. Most of the team had suffered temporary neural disruption, but as the mission's military, had somehow absorbed the brunt of the attack while shielding others. Doctor consulted her with two of her arms while the other two gestured expressively. "The quantum neural resonance therapy has shown no improvement. The bioelectric stimulation protocols have failed to penetrate whatever barrier surrounds his consciousness. Even the Etherian mind healers were unable to make contact with his psyche." Sarah remembered the Etherians' attempt 2 weeks ago. The gaseous beings had surrounded Spod, their energy forms pulsing with soft light as they tried to reach his mind. After hours of effort, they had withdrawn, communicating through their translation device that they sensed, an impenetrable fortress of will, protecting something precious within. "There is one possibility," Doctor continued hesitantly. "The belief that consciousness can be awakened through emotional resonance rather than technical intervention. They practice something they call soul calling, but it requires an intimate connection that our medical protocols cannot replicate." Sarah's heart leaped. "What kind of connection?" "The kind that exists between bonded mates. Physical contact combined with emotional intensity. The belief that love can transcend the barriers that separate minds." Doctor paused, her crystalline features shifting color slightly. "However, attempting such a procedure carries risks. If the neural cascade is disrupted incorrectly, it could cause permanent damage." "What do I need to do?" Doctor studied Sarah carefully. "The texts speak of the most intimate form of connection between mates, the sharing of breath and life essence. For humans, this would translate to physical intimacy while maintaining direct neural contact." Sarah felt her cheeks burn, but her resolve remained firm. "If there's even a chance it could bring him back, I'll try anything." Over the next hour, Doctor explained the procedure. Sarah would need to maintain physical contact with while the medical pod's neural interface monitored both their brain patterns. The goal was to create an emotional resonance strong enough to penetrate the protective barrier around his consciousness. "The timing must be precise," Doctor warned. "When your emotional intensity peaks, there will be a brief window where the neural frequencies align. That is when the connection might be possible." Sarah spent the rest of the day preparing herself mentally. She walked through the observation deck, watching ships from across the galaxy come and go through the massive space station's docking bays. Humanity was so new to this galactic community, barely 5 years since first contact. They were considered primitive by most species, lacking the advanced mental disciplines or technological sophistication of older civilizations. But humans had something that puzzled and sometimes impressed their galactic neighbors, an emotional depth and intensity that bordered on the incomprehensible. Where other species approached relationships with logic and careful consideration, humans dove in with reckless passion. It was seen as both a weakness and a strange kind of strength. As evening approached by the station's artificial day cycle, Sarah returned to the medical bay. Doctor had prepared a private room adjacent to the main facility, equipped with the necessary monitoring equipment, but designed for privacy. Pod had been reconfigured to allow direct access while maintaining life support. "Are you certain about this?" Doctor asked one final time. Sarah nodded, her hand already reaching toward the pod's opening mechanism. "He would do the same for me." The pod opened with a soft hiss, and Sarah saw her husband clearly for the first time in weeks. The alien life support systems had kept him in perfect physical condition, but his face held an emptiness that broke her heart. She climbed carefully into the pod beside him, feeling the strange, tingling sensation of the neural monitoring field activating around them. She whispered, taking his hand in hers, "I'm here, I'm not giving up on you." She began to speak to him, telling him about her days on the station, about the incredible things she had seen and learned. She talked about their first meeting at the diplomatic academy, about their wedding day, about the dreams they had shared for humanity's future among the stars. The monitoring equipment hummed softly, tracking their neural patterns. Sarah could see the displays showing brain activity steady but shallow, like a candle flame barely flickering in a vast darkness. Her own patterns danced with emotion, spikes of memory and love creating colorful cascades across the screens. Hours passed. Sarah held close, feeling the warmth of his body, remembering countless nights they had shared. She spoke of her love for him, of her fears and hopes, of the future they would build together when he returned to her. "The neural resonance is beginning to fluctuate," Doctor reported from the monitoring station. "Your emotional output is affecting his patterns." Sarah felt a surge of hope. She moved closer to, pressing her forehead against his, feeling the strange tingle of the neural field intensifying around them. "Come back to me," she whispered against his lips. "Come back to us. Humanity needs you. I need you." The monitoring equipment began to beep more rapidly. Sarah could see neural patterns starting to shift, the steady flatness beginning to show peaks and valleys. She thought about their wedding day, about the promise they had made to each other through sickness and health, through whatever challenges the universe might throw at them. "Now," Doctor called urgently, "the resonance window is opening." Sarah pressed her lips to, pouring every ounce of love and determination into that connection. She felt something shift in the neural field around them, a sensation like stepping through a doorway into a vast, echoing space. For a moment, she sensed something beyond the physical, a presence, familiar and beloved, trapped behind walls of protective darkness. The kiss deepened, and Sarah felt as though she was falling through space and time, reaching across an impossible distance toward the man she loved. The monitoring equipment around them erupted in alarms and chimes as both their neural patterns spiked beyond normal parameters. Felt himself floating in an endless void, aware but disconnected from everything he had ever known. Time had no meaning in this place between consciousness and oblivion. He remembered the psychic attack on 442B, remembered the searing pain as alien minds tried to tear through his thoughts, remembered making the choice to shield his team even if it meant sacrificing himself. He had built walls around his mind, layer upon layer of protective barriers that kept the alien intrusion at bay. But those same walls had trapped him here, in this gray space where nothing existed except the echo of his own thoughts. He had tried countless times to break free, but every attempt only strengthened the prison he had created. Then something changed. A warmth penetrated the darkness, carrying with it a familiar presence that made his heart race with recognition. Sarah. He could sense her somehow, feel her love and determination reaching across the impossible distance that separated them. "Sarah," he called out into the void, but his voice seemed to vanish without echo. The warmth grew stronger, and with it came images and sensations that pulled at his consciousness. He saw their wedding day through her eyes, felt her joy and hope as they exchanged vows. He experienced her fear and loneliness during the long months of his absence, her desperate attempts to find a way to bring him back. "I'm here," her voice whispered through the darkness. "I'm not giving up on you." Tried to move toward the sound, but the walls around his mind held firm. He could feel them now, massive structures built from his own will and determination, designed to protect but now serving as a cage. Each barrier was constructed from memories of duty and sacrifice, from his years of military training that had taught him to put others before himself. The presence of Sarah's love pressed against these walls, not trying to tear them down but simply offering a different path. Through their connection, he could feel her physical presence, the warmth of her body against his, the gentle pressure of her lips on his. The sensation was like a lifeline thrown into the abyss. "You have to let me in," her voice came again, clearer now. "You have to choose to come back." Realized that the walls weren't just protecting him from the alien attack. They were protecting him from the pain of living, from the responsibility of leadership, from the weight of being one of humanity's representatives in a galaxy that often saw his species as insignificant. It was easier to remain here, suspended in this gray peace, than to face the challenges waiting in the real world. But Sarah's love burned through those justifications like sunlight through fog. He remembered why he had chosen to serve, why he had accepted the mission to 442B in the first place. It wasn't just duty that drove him. It was hope for humanity's future, belief in their potential to contribute something valuable to the galactic community. Through Sarah's connection, he could sense the medical bay around his physical body, could feel the alien technology working to sustain his life. Doctor and her team had done everything they could, but their advanced science couldn't reach the purely human core of his consciousness. Only love could bridge that gap. Began to examine the walls around his mind, looking for a way through rather than trying to tear them down. Each barrier represented a different aspect of his protective instincts, built from layers of training and experience. The first wall was constructed from his military discipline, the rigid structure that had kept him focused during countless dangerous missions. Sarah's presence helped him understand that discipline didn't have to mean isolation. True strength came from connection, from the bonds between people that made sacrifice meaningful. He found a gap in this barrier, a space shaped like trust and squeezed through. The second wall was built from his fear of failure, from the weight of representing humanity on the galactic stage. Every interaction with alien species carried the potential for misunderstanding or catastrophe. One wrong word, one cultural misstep, could damage relations for generations. But through Sarah's memories, he saw how humanity's supposed weaknesses had sometimes become strengths. Their emotional intensity, their unpredictable creativity, their stubborn refusal to accept limitations, these traits had impressed some alien species even as they puzzled others. Humans brought something unique to the galactic community, something worth preserving and sharing. This realization created another opening and pushed through to face the third and strongest wall. This barrier was built from love itself, his protective instinct toward Sarah, his team, his species. It had been this wall that absorbed the brunt of the psychic attack, turning his love into a shield that saved others at the cost of trapping himself. "I'm not asking you to stop protecting us," Sarah's voice whispered through their connection. "I'm asking you to come back so we can protect each other." Understood then that his sacrifice had been incomplete. True protection meant being present, being available to face challenges together rather than shouldering them alone. The psychic attack had ended, his team was safe, and now the greatest danger was his own absence from their lives. He reached out toward Sarah's presence, feeling their connection strengthen as he chose to trust rather than simply endure. The walls around his mind began to shift, transforming from barriers into bridges. His protective instincts remained, but now they connected him to the people he loved rather than isolating him from them. The void around him began to brighten, gray emptiness giving way to swirling colors that reminded him of Sarah's laughter, of Earth's blue skies, of the incredible diversity of life he had encountered among the stars. Each memory carried him closer to consciousness, to the choice between the safety of isolation and the beautiful danger of truly living. Through their neural connection, could feel Sarah's determination, her absolute refusal to let him go. She had crossed the galaxy to find him, had trusted alien medicine and technology because she believed in their love. Her faith gave him the strength to take the final step. Made his choice. He reached through the transformed barriers of his mind, accepting the pain and responsibility and joy that waited in the waking world. He felt his consciousness rushing back toward his physical body like a river returning to its course after a long drought. The sensation was overwhelming, the feeling of breath in his lungs, the weight of gravity, the countless sensations of being alive in a physical form. But strongest of all was the feeling of Sarah's lips against his, the taste of her tears, the warmth of her body pressed against his in the alien medical pod. His eyes opened for the first time in 3 months, focusing slowly on Sarah's face inches from his own. She was crying, her tears falling onto his cheeks as she whispered his name over and over. Behind her, he could see Doctor and her medical team, their alien features showing expressions of amazement and relief. "Sarah," he managed to whisper, his voice rough from disuse. "I heard you. I felt you calling me back." She laughed through her tears, kissing him again and again. "I knew you were still in there. I knew love could reach you." Doctor approached the pod, her four arms moving in patterns that now recognized as expressions of wonder. "This is unprecedented in our medical records. The neural cascade has completely normalized. Your consciousness has fully reintegrated with your physical systems." Tried to sit up, feeling Sarah's hands supporting him as the medical pod adjusted to his movements. Around them, alien medical staff were chattering in their various languages, recording readings and discussing the implications of what they had witnessed. "How long?" asked. "3 months," Sarah replied, her hand caressing his face. "3 months of fighting to bring you back." Closed his eyes, processing the magnitude of what had happened. He had been lost in the space between minds, trapped by his own protective instincts, and only Sarah's love had provided a way home. It was a very human solution to an alien problem, one that the advanced civilizations of the galaxy couldn't have conceived or implemented. "The Galactic Council will want to study this," Doctor said, her voice filled with scientific excitement. "The implications for consciousness research, for treating neural trauma across species, it could revolutionize how we understand the connection between mind and body." But was only half listening. His attention was focused on Sarah, on the woman who had refused to accept the impossible, who had trusted in something the alien doctors couldn't measure or replicate. She had reminded him that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their logic. It was their capacity for love that transcended all boundaries. 6 months later, stood before the Galactic Council Assembly, Sarah at his side as they prepared to deliver their report on what the galaxy's scholars had dubbed the Awakening Protocol. The massive chamber housed representatives from 47 different species, each delegation arranged according to their specific environmental needs. The crystalline archivists hovered in their mineral suspension fields, their faceted bodies refracting the chamber's light into rainbow patterns. The gaseous collectivity swirled in their containment vessels, colors shifting to indicate their emotional states. Ancient ambassadors rooted themselves in specially prepared soil beds, their branching forms swaying with thought-induced breezes. At the center of it all sat the High Arbiter, a being so old that most records of their species' origin had been lost to time. They existed as pure consciousness within a crystalline matrix, their thoughts translated through quantum resonance patterns that every species could understand. "Captain," the High Arbiter's voice resonated through every mind present, "your recovery has challenged our understanding of consciousness itself. The medical community wishes to learn how human emotional bonding can achieve what our most advanced technologies could not." Stepped forward, feeling the weight of countless alien gazes upon him. 3 months of recovery and testing had prepared him for this moment, but the significance still felt overwhelming. Humanity had been part of the Galactic Alliance for only 5 years, considered newcomers with primitive technology and unpredictable emotional responses. Now they were being asked to teach something that might benefit species who had mastered the stars before Earth's sun was born. "Honored representatives," began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation matrix, "what happened to me was not a technique that can be easily replicated or taught. It was the result of something uniquely human, our ability to form bonds that transcend rational understanding." A ripple of interest passed through the assembly. The logical collective, beings of pure reason who had evolved beyond emotional response, transmitted queries through their quantum network. Their spokesperson, a geometric construct of shifting patterns, addressed the assembly. "This presents a paradox," the collective stated. "Emotional attachment is widely considered an evolutionary inefficiency. How can such a primitive response system achieve results beyond advanced medical intervention?" Sarah squeezed his hand, giving him strength for what he knew would be a difficult explanation. Over the past months, they had worked with and consciousness researchers from across the galaxy, trying to understand exactly what had happened in that medical pod. "With respect to the logical collective," Sarah interjected, stepping forward to address the assembly, "I believe the term primitive, what we've discovered. Human emotional bonding creates quantum entanglement patterns between consciousness fields that your instruments can detect but not replicate. Doctor approached the speaking platform, her crystalline skin shifting to a formal presentation mode. The medical data supports Mrs. assertion. During the awakening procedure, we recorded neural resonance frequencies that exceeded our theoretical maximums. The emotional connection between the bonded pair created a carrier wave that penetrated quantum barriers we previously thought impermeable. The Etherian delegation pulsed with soft bioluminescence, their gaseous forms swirling in patterns that indicated deep contemplation. Their representative, a cloud of sentient particles, spoke through harmonic modulation. "We have studied consciousness the Etherian said, but our approaches focus on individual transcendence. This human concept of strengthening consciousness through connection rather than separation is revolutionary." Felt a surge of pride for his species, but also a deep responsibility. The techniques being discussed could potentially help countless beings across the galaxy, but they couldn't be simply or programmed into medical devices. They required something that many advanced species had evolved beyond: the willingness to be vulnerable, to risk pain for the sake of connection. "The procedure that awakened me," continued, "required my wife to risk her own neural stability. She had to open herself completely to our bond, trusting that our love was stronger than the barriers around my consciousness. Many of your species have evolved beyond such reckless emotional investment." A low harmonic sound filled the chamber, the delegation expressing what their translation matrix rendered as thoughtful agreement. The eldest among them, a being whose root system had grown for over 3,000 years, spoke in whispers that rustled like wind through leaves. "Perhaps," the ancient said slowly, "in our pursuit of perfection, some of us have lost touch with the very forces that give consciousness meaning. These humans demonstrate that connection, not isolation, may be the key to transcending our limitations." The High Arbiter's presence intensified, drawing every consciousness in the chamber toward a single point of focus. The implications extend beyond medical applications. If consciousness can be strengthened through emotional bonding, this could revolutionize our understanding of collective intelligence, telepathic networks, and even faster-than-light communication. Over the following hours, representatives from dozens of species shared their observations and theories. Whose soul-calling traditions had provided the initial framework for the awakening protocol, spoke of ancient practices they had thought obsolete. The symphonic minds, who existed as living music, demonstrated how emotional harmonies could create resonance patterns across vast distances. But it was the testimony of that proved most significant. Their delegation had been notably absent from previous sessions, the guilt over the psychic attack that had nearly killed, creating a diplomatic tension that threatened their alliance membership. Ambassador Prime, the most skilled psychic in their species, approached the platform with obvious difficulty. They were tall, ethereal beings whose mental powers had made them one of the galaxy's most respected civilizations. To see their representatives struggling with emotional expression was unprecedented. "The attack on Captain was conducted by extremists of our kind," Prime began, their telepathic voice trembling through the translation matrix. "We believed that human minds were too simple, too chaotic to participate meaningfully in galactic civilization. The captain's sacrifice to protect his team and his wife's devotion to his recovery have shown us the error of our assumptions." The delegation stood as one, their forms shimmering with what could only be described as shame and regret. "We request permission to learn from the humans," Prime continued. "Our mastery of mental disciplines has made us powerful, but it has also isolated us from the very connections that give consciousness its strength. We wish to study this thing you call love." The request sent shockwaves through the assembly. They were among the oldest and most advanced species in the galaxy, their psychic abilities rivaling those of the legendary First Ones who had supposedly ascended beyond physical existence. For them to seek teaching from humanity was unprecedented. Looked at Sarah, seeing his own amazement reflected in her eyes. When they had first joined the diplomatic service, they had dreamed of humanity finding its place among the stars. Never had they imagined that their love story would become a bridge between species, a key to unlocking mysteries that had puzzled galactic civilization for. "The human concept of love," said finally, "is not something that can be learned from textbooks or absorbed through telepathic download. It requires vulnerability, the willingness to risk pain for the sake of another's. It means choosing connection over safety, trust over control. He paused, looking out over the assembly of alien representatives. We would be honored to share what we've learned, but you must understand, this isn't a technology that can be. It's a way of being that each species, each individual must discover for themselves. The High Arbiter's consciousness expanded, touching every mind in the chamber with a sensation of profound understanding. Then let this be the beginning of a new era of cooperation. Not conquest through superior technology or domination through advanced evolution, but growth through connection, strength through vulnerability, transcendence through love. As the formal session concluded, delegates from dozens of species approached and Sarah, requesting private meetings to discuss the implementation of connection-based healing in their own societies. The logical collective wanted to study how emotional bonds could enhance their quantum processing networks. The crystalline archivists sought to understand how love might preserve consciousness beyond physical death. But it was a small delegation of young beings from various species that touched most deeply. They had formed what they called a connection study group, dedicated to exploring emotional bonding across species boundaries. Their leader was a young whose crystalline features shifted with barely contained excitement. "Captain," the young alien said, "we believe that love might be the key to true galactic unity. Not political alliance or economic cooperation, but genuine understanding between different forms of consciousness. Will you help us explore this possibility?" Looked at Sarah, seeing the same hope and determination in her eyes that had brought him back from the void between worlds. "Yes," he said simply, "love is meant to be shared." As they left the chamber together, reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. A psychic attack that should have destroyed him had instead revealed humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy. The love that had awakened him from his neural prison was now awakening something far greater, the possibility that consciousness itself could evolve not through isolation and perfection, but through connection and courage. The galaxy would never be the same, and it would be better for it because sometimes the most primitive response is also the most profound truth. That consciousness finds its greatest strength not in standing alone, but in choosing to love.